Welcome back, everyone. Today's video is a topic that was requested a lot, and I also put it on my poll, and it was pretty well received. The projects that I'm going to cover are a lot of Z-related names, or Z coins, or Z associations, so I'm hoping that I don't mess it up. I'm going to try to cover as much of this information as possible. As most of you know, if you've been following along on Twitter, the write-up took me significantly longer than usual to do because the majority of these projects I didn't really know anything, if nothing really about, so I was kind of learning from scratch. So because of that, and my interest in being factual and unbiased, I reached out to the teams. Most of them got back to me. The only one I didn't end up hearing from was Monero. So I'd like to do a shout out and thank all the teams that helped me make sure that my information for this video was factual and up to date. Side note, I'd like to mention I was invited to Crypto CoinCon, which is in Philadelphia in August. So I will be attending that. If any of you guys are going to go, let me know. I'm sure I'll be walking around. I'll probably run into most of you. And before we get started, my usual disclaimer, which is please do your own research. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just a girl that likes cryptocurrencies, that does a bunch of research and makes videos for fun. So on that note, let's get started. I want to briefly define or describe what I consider to be the most important aspect of a privacy coin, which is obviously the privacy protocol itself, or whatever it uses to achieve privacy, the fungibility of the coin, and then also the level of decentralization of the project and the network. Privacy within cryptocurrencies is the ability of a user to have and hold coins without them being observable, without your balances being known, and being able to send and receive transactions without that being traced. Fungibility is when a coin is worth the exact same amount as another coin on the blockchain, meaning that a transaction history cannot make a coin any less important or any less valuable within the blockchain. So think about like a US dollar. If someone does something illegal with a US dollar, there is no history behind that dollar. So if you get it, there's no way you can get in trouble for having that dollar, and that dollar isn't worth any less because it had a spotty history, because there's no way to tell where it came from or who used it for what. Decentralization would be around consensus and governance. So who controls the project direction and who controls consensus. Meaning all nodes would have the same power and level of control, and no node would be worth more or more valuable or have more power within the network. Also, that there is no single entity that is controlling the network or the project. Let's start with ring confidential transactions. Basically, that just enables the users to hide their transaction within other outputs on the blockchain. Stealth addresses will hide the receiving addresses of the transaction, and then the ring CTs will hide the transaction amount within the transaction. A project that is well known for using those kinds of privacy protocols is Monero. Monero uses a proof of work consensus protocol, and they have a block time of 2 minutes. 100% of the block rewards are given to the miners. There is no governance or voting model, and they have no treasury within the ecosystem. Monero's blockchain is private by default, which means they do not have a transparent transaction option. Monero would be considered 100% fungible because all of the XMR coins are equal in value to any other XMR coin that is in use, and there can be nothing that would taint the value. As far as decentralization goes, Monero is not led by any one group. It's basically managed by people who volunteer, so I would consider the project very decentralized. Developers that work on Monero are funded by user contribution, and this goes through the forum funding system. Monero's project source code and all updates to the project are always available on Monero's public GitHub. Some pros. So the first one is Monero recently underwent a fork which gave some updates to the proof of work hashing algorithm. The update was backwards incompatible, and the major change is basically that it's rendering all ASICs mining hardware useless. The fork also increased the ring sizes, which means the transactions are going to be more private, but they're also going to be more resource intensive. Monero has no block size limit, so the block size can be increased on demand. Some cons of Monero. So because the Monero blockchain is entirely private, it's more so an estimation of the total circulating supply of the coin. A common complaint is that there would be no way to be able to tell if there was an attack or a coin forgery on the network because, again, they have no real idea of the total circulating supply. Another con is that the wallet takes forever to sync. I thought maybe I was actually doing something wrong, but it took days and days for it to sync, which was kind of a pain in the butt. If their privacy protocols are ever broken, that means any of the transactions on the blockchain will now be transparent. In fact, Monero's privacy was actually broken from 2014 to 2017. If you go to monerolink.com, you can see the list of all the transactions on the Monero blockchain during that time that the encryption was broken. The Monero developers did fix this, but it is a pretty big deal considering Monero is thought of as like the leading group or the leading coin within privacy. Next up is Zero Coin Protocol. So this protocol was proposed by a professor from the University of Johns Hopkins. It was originally created with the intention of use on Bitcoin. They wanted to find a way to make the transactions on Bitcoin anonymous. ZeroCoin works by allowing the user to burn up coins, which is called a ZeroCoin mint, and then spend the exact same amounts of coins later, which is called a ZeroCoin spend. The ZeroCoin spend utilizes coins that have absolutely no transaction history because they are minted as new coins on the blockchain. A notable project that uses this kind of technology is PIVX. So PIVX is a proof-of-stake project, and they have block times which are 1 minute. 90% of the block rewards will go to the master nodes or those who are staking. And then up to or a maximum of 10% can go to the treasury. And what I mean by that is that the PIVX treasury only pays out if there are successful proposals within that 1 month period. So if there are no proposals, then there's no reason for funding. Privacy. PIVX uses a custom ZeroCoin protocol to anonymize transactions on their blockchain. Their private option is called ZPIV, but that only exists in the wallet and can only be utilized for private transactions. Fungibility. PIVX is considered 100% fungible because it utilizes ZPIV, which is a coin mixing process that allows the transaction from the sender and the receiver to be 100% private. Decentralization. PIVX was originally a fork of Dash, so their decentralization is very similar to that of Dash's. I would like to mention, though, that they are not a clone of Dash, and they have all updated code, so they are an entire entity and separate from Dash now. Also, there is no main person or main entity that is controlling the project, so because of that, I would consider this a decentralized coin. Pros: ZPIV mint and spend breaks any transaction links between addresses. PIVX retains supply auditability. ZPIV implementation allows up to 7 denominations of ZPIV to be sent in a single transaction. Some cons: currently PIVX uses a trusted setup, but they are moving to trustless bulletproofs in a future build. Breaking of the RSA 2048 challenge. Although this has never been done, it is a possibility that if it was broken, that this would allow for forgery of coins. Some care and caution is also needed when doing ZeroCoin mint and spends. And while governance is decentralized to the masternode owners, it's still those owners that are voting on budget proposals. Another user of the ZeroCoin protocol is Zcoin. Zcoin is another proof-of-work project, and it has a block time of 10 minutes. 14% of the block rewards go to the founders for the first 4 years, 56% go to the miners, and 30% go to the Z nodes. There is no governance or voting model in this project, and they do not have an active treasury. As mentioned before, Zcoin utilizes ZeroCoin protocol. They were actually the first cryptocurrency to utilize that protocol. Fungibility: because Zcoin can offer a user 100% privacy, the coin is considered fungible. Decentralization. Zcoin implemented Z nodes last year, and the thought behind it was that it would assist in decentralization of the project. Similar to Dash's masternode network, Z nodes will always host a complete download of the chain, and they will help to verify transactions on the network. Pros: similar to PIVX, the ZeroCoin mint and spend will break any transaction links between addresses. Zcoin also retains its supply auditability. In the future, they plan to move to the Merkle Tree protocol or the MTP protocol. This is ASICs resistant, and it's going to help them with decentralization. Some cons: it doesn't hide the transaction amount, just the transaction addresses. But in the same light, that's kind of a pro because that allows for auditability within the network. Right now, a trusted setup is required, and similar to PIVX, they are working on something in the future to make a trustless setup. Some care is required when doing ZeroCoin mint and spends. The final con would be that Zcoin has a 61% hash rate on one pool. And so because of that, I would consider the project partially centralized. Next up is CoinJoin. So this is a method to anonymize transactions that was proposed by Gregory Maxwell. CoinJoin is based on the principle that you group together transactions to have joint payments. When a joint payment is made, it's impossible to decipher the input or the output of the transaction. That prevents any third parties from determining the amount or the direction of the transaction. A project that uses the CoinJoin protocol would be Dash. So Dash is a proof-of-work protocol, and they have a block time of 2.5 minutes. 45% of the block rewards will go to the masternodes, 45% go to the miners, and then 10% goes to the treasury. They do have a governance or voting model, and they do have a treasury, which they're actually pretty famous for. Fungibility. Dash has the option for a transparent transaction, but they also have a private option, which is called private send. When an individual utilizes the private send option, the origin of the coins isn't known, which means that the project is fungible because no past transaction history can affect the importance of the coin going forward. Decentralization. At the time of writing this, Dash has 4,815 masternodes on the network. Normally, masternodes are seen as a centralizing aspect of the project, but because there are so many of them, I would consider this a strength for the decentralization argument for Dash's network. Some pros. So with Dash, the decentralized pool of masternodes can vote to defund the core team. They could also even vote to remove individual members if necessary. Dash retains their supply auditability. Dash's core group is a legal entity that is currently owned by Dash's DAO. That means if it came down to it, there could be a legal process that could remove Dash's core team. Another pro is their awesome treasury model. So Dash will fund their own project, obviously, within the treasury model, but they also have the ability to vote on proposal and fund outside projects or just stuff that they think is interesting. Some cons. So the private send feature of Dash has been the subject of some skepticism. The coin mixing strategy of the private send is really dependent on how much liquidity or how many users are on the network. And also people have complained that apparently the coin mixing process is very slow. I can't speak to that personally because I've never used it. Next up is ZK Snarks, and that stands for Zero Knowledge, Succinct, Non-Interactive Argument of Knowledge. I'm really happy I got through that. That took me like 10 tries. This technology allows miners to verify transactions without knowing who sent the coins or who they're going to. Each party uses a cryptographic hash that basically verifies that the statement is true without revealing any intimate knowledge related to the transaction. In ZK Snarks, no mixing occurs, and that's because there's no knowledge, so there's nothing to mix. My first project that uses ZK Snarks is Zcash. Zcash is a proof-of-work project and it has a block time of 2.5 minutes. 20% of the block rewards are given to the founders and 80% are given to the miners. This project has no voting model or governance and has no active treasury system. Their privacy, as I mentioned before, is ZK Snarks, and I'm not going to go into what that acronym is again. Fungibility. So Zcash's blockchain is private by default, which means that when Zcash is mined, the coin is private. But oftentimes those miners will pay out to transparent addresses, which means that it creates a traceable transaction history for the coin. The history of the transparent transactions is similar to that of Bitcoin, but if people are worried about the Zcash having some sort of history behind it, it can just get washed through a Z address and it will clear the transaction history. So because Zcash is able to offer its users 100% privacy and intraceability, the project would be considered fungible. Decentralization. Currently, Zcash is managed by a US-based for-profit company. This company is called Zero Coin Electric and it is an LLC. This company takes 20% of all block rewards for the first 4 years, and these block rewards are paid out to the stakeholders of the LLC. Due to the fact that this coin is managed by a central company that could in theory be brought to court, I would consider the project partially centralized. I know I'm going to get yelled at for that comment, so let me just say my piece. I realize that the privacy technology that they utilize has no backdoor, and they have no way to be strong-armed in court to release transaction histories or deprivatize any of the transactions within their blockchain. I'm not doubting their technology. What I'm saying is that if the majority of their developers or major or important people from their project work under this LLC and the LLC gets brought to court and somebody gets in trouble or arrested or ends up in prison, how successful is the project going to be if part of or most of their project company that runs it is in jail? That's my only point, is that there is a centralized US-based entity that could physically get in trouble in some capacity. That's the only point I'm making. Disagree with me, don't disagree with me, what have you, that's fine. But I just wanted to make sure that I got my point across. Some pros, they have very efficient anonymity within the transactions as long as people are using the Z addresses. Their proof sizes are small, and because of that, they're fast to verify. Zcash soon, with their sapling upgrade, will be the first cryptocurrency that has private transactions on a mobile app. Zcash has created a not-for-profit foundation that will eventually be managing the project. For the current time, it's the LLC, but their plan is to push the LLC out of as much of what it's doing now and eventually have the foundation take over. Some cons. It's CPU heavy to send a lot of private transactions via those Z addresses, but they have said that the sapling upgrade is going to help decrease the CPU intensity of the transactions. It has a complicated trusted setup that needs to be set up by developers, but they said that there is another update coming in which they are going to make it easier and there's going to be much more participants. They said that this update is supposed to be out in Q1 of 2018, even though we're technically in Q2, and they're saying that they want that upgrade to be available when they also do the sapling upgrade so that they're done in unison. A large con, which I would have mentioned, would have been that they did not have supply auditability, so that any fraud or dishonesty within the network would have been very hard to detect. But one of their recent updates did address this, and now there is a way for the nodes to see a total coin count. And on to the last project. This project is ZEN Cash. It is also a proof of work consensus protocol project, and the block times are 2.5 minutes. As of the end of May of this year, 70% of the block rewards will go to the miners, 10% will go to the DAO, 10% will go to secure nodes, and 10% will go to their super nodes. They do have a governance or voting model, and they also have a treasury system on the project. They're also building a wide variety of privacy-oriented applications that are going to be able to be used on the ZEN infrastructure. They plan on providing free access to the web with a domain fronting service called ZenHide. They also plan on creating an anonymous publishing application called ZenPub. Privacy-wise, ZEN Cash also uses the ZK snarks, which again, I'm not going into that acronym. Fungibility. So ZEN Cash has two kinds of transaction addresses available. They have Z addresses, which can shield the transaction and or the balance, and they have T addresses, which are transparent and are just normal transaction addresses. Because ZEN Cash, like all the other projects that I've covered, can offer 100% privacy and traceability, the project is considered fungible. Decentralization. So right now ZEN Cash has about 9,000 nodes on the network, and it's using an intranode encryption that helps prevent middleman attacks. They recently announced a new class of node for the network, and these are called supernodes. They're going to bring sidechain and on-chain solutions to the ZEN Cash ecosystem. Fun fact, if you add all of their nodes up, they have more active nodes on their network than Dash, PIVX, and Zcoin altogether. Pros, they have very good privacy with the utilization of their Z addresses. They have a large daily volume of shielded transactions, which helps to increase anonymity. Sender and receiver addresses and transaction amounts can be shielded on the blockchain with the utilization of their Z addresses. The protocol shields not only the sender and recipient's address, but also the transaction amount. This can create some issues with supply auditability. The ZEN Cash core development team has the ability to veto accepted proposals, but that's only temporary until the DAO is active. An interesting point to mention is that ZEN Cash has a partnership with IOHK. IOHK, for those who don't know, is a technological company that is famous for working with Cardano. One of the founders, Charles Hoskinson, who I interviewed quite a long time ago, actually released the news of this partnership live when we were doing our stream together. ZEN Cash and IOHK Research and Development plan to focus their efforts on resolving two issues that people find with cryptocurrencies, which is scaling and governance. For governance, they're working on recreating a DAO treasury model. They want to find a way to make the treasury more transparent, but also incentivize users in the network. And for scaling, IOHK is evaluating possible options for ZEN Cash. Right now, the two major contenders are Spectre and Phantom. This would result in ZEN Cash being the first block-based DAG. Some final thoughts. So as far as Monero goes, I think that there's always going to be a place for Monero in cryptocurrency because of the fact that it is 100% private. But I think, honestly, the idea that there is a balance between private and transparent is what's going to be the real future of cryptocurrencies, at least in a mass adoption usability way. My thoughts on PIVX are, I think most of you know, I really love the project. I love the team. I like the idea of what they're going for. It's not just about privacy. It's about a whole slew of other things and kind of creating this awesome community. And they're very proactive and very friendly and very inclusive. So I love PIVX because of that, but also because I do think that with the staking of their ZPIV and the new wallets and all these other things that are coming out, that they're definitely on the right track for mass adoption. My thoughts on Zcoin are, it didn't really kind of jump out at me as a project that I want to invest in. I can't really pinpoint exactly why. I just know that it just doesn't seem super appealing to me. That's not to say that the project's not great and they don't have a great team and so on. But to me, I guess I just didn't feel like a pull towards the project like I did with PIVX. Final thoughts on Dash are, it goes without saying that it's a great project. It's been around for a long time. They've really proven themselves and they do a lot of awesome things with their treasury money outside of just funding their project. Final thoughts on Zcash are that although this is going to be a cause for contention, and I'm sure I'm going to upset a lot of people because everybody's thoughts are that the LLC is not that big of a deal and they can't bring them to court and whatever, I just really don't like the idea of it. Even if it doesn't end up causing problems, it defeats the purpose of decentralization if there is a physical centralized entity that can be pinpointed about the project. I'm not downplaying the importance of the project or the fact that it's been successful. I'm just saying personally that would be a reason that I would be less interested in the project as far as investment goes because of the LLC. Final thoughts on Zencash are that I'm kind of upset with myself that I didn't look into it after Charles Hoskinson was on my channel. To be honest, I forgot until I was doing the write-up for this video, I think because I was so nervous during the interview that I didn't really retain any of the information. I do love that they're working with IOHK, and I like that they're trying to bring decentralized platforms to their project, which is definitely very awesome. It's not gonna lie, that was a little exhausting. I went through a lot of projects and a lot of information that I didn't know, so as far as informative wise, this was definitely a huge learning experience for me. Again, I apologize if I made any mistakes. I did put forth my best effort to contact teams and make sure my information was relevant. A pleasant reminder, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Thank you for watching if you stayed till the end, and also if you're interested in supporting the channel, you can check out my Patreon, or you can go to my website if you want some merch that is up and available now. For the time being, that about covers it, but I will see you guys soon.